She left me with those exact words. "You're not a man." I didn't argue, couldn't argue. But when she walked into that dinner party 3 years later and saw who I'd become, the look on her face was priceless. What she didn't expect was finding me sitting next to her former best friend. What happened next? Let's just say karma has a twisted sense of humor, and some betrayals come full circle in ways you never see coming. My name is Cole Anderson. I'm 37 years old, and back then I was running a pretty successful organic produce delivery service here in Denver, Colorado. Built it from the ground up after leaving my corporate job 5 years earlier. The business was doing well. We had over 2,000 regular customers and partnerships with local farms throughout the Front Range. I met Brenda Peck at my cousin Mike's barbecue in the summer of 2019. She walked into that backyard like she owned the place, wearing this flowing sundress that caught everyone's attention. Brenda worked as a marketing director for a high-end interior design firm downtown. She had this confidence about her that just drew people in, myself included. We hit it off immediately. While everyone else was talking about sports or complaining about traffic, Brenda and I found ourselves discussing sustainable farming and the future of local food systems. She seemed genuinely interested in my business, asking smart questions about supply chains and customer retention. I remember thinking, finally, someone who gets it. What attracted me most wasn't just her looks, though she was definitely beautiful, but her ambition. Brenda had plans, goals, dreams bigger than most people I knew. She talked about expanding her firm's reach, maybe starting her own company someday. I respected that drive because I'd felt the same way when I started my delivery service. Our first real date was at this farm-to-table restaurant in Boulder. I picked her up in my delivery truck, not exactly romantic, but it was all I had at the time. Instead of being embarrassed, Brenda laughed and said it was authentically Cole. That night, we talked until the restaurant closed, then sat in my truck for another hour just getting to know each other. The early months were incredible. Brenda would come with me to farmers markets on Saturday mornings, charming vendors and customers alike. She had suggestions for the business that actually made sense: improving our website, partnering with local restaurants, creating subscription boxes for different dietary needs. I started thinking she might be the perfect partner in every sense of the word. By Christmas that year, Brenda was spending most nights at my place in Highlands. My little house wasn't much to look at, but she said she loved how cozy and real it felt compared to her downtown apartment. She'd rearrange my furniture, bring over houseplants, make the place feel more like a home than it ever had before. Looking back, maybe I should have noticed how quickly she was changing things around me. By spring of 2020, Brenda and I had settled into what felt like a perfect rhythm. She'd wake up early with me to help pack delivery routes, then head downtown to her design firm while I handled the morning deliveries. We'd meet for lunch whenever our schedules allowed, and evenings were spent planning weekend trips to visit new farms or trying out restaurants for potential partnerships. The business was growing faster than I'd ever imagined. Brenda's marketing background proved invaluable. She helped me redesign our website, set up social media accounts, and even negotiated better rates with some of our suppliers. "You're too nice, Cole," she'd tell me after successfully talking down a vendor's prices. Sometimes you need to be tougher in business. What I loved most about Brenda was how she challenged me to think bigger. When I mentioned wanting to expand into Boulder County, she didn't just nod and smile like most people would. She pulled out her laptop and started researching demographics, competitor analysis, potential delivery routes. Within a week, she'd created a whole presentation about expansion strategy. "We could double your customer base within 6 months," Brenda said one evening, flipping through her charts and graphs. That week didn't escape my notice, and honestly, it made me happy. I've been running this business solo for years, and having a partner who genuinely cared about its success felt incredible. My family adored her from the start. When I brought Brenda to my parents' anniversary dinner in May, she charmed everyone with stories about sustainable farming and her plans to help grow the business. My dad, who'd been skeptical about my decision to leave corporate life, actually pulled me aside afterward. "That girl's got a good head on her shoulders, son," he said. "Don't let this one get away." My brother Jake was equally impressed. During our monthly poker night, he kept asking about Brenda's business ideas and whether I was planning to make things official. "She's different from the others, Cole. This one actually gets what you're trying to build." Brenda fit into my world so naturally that I started imagining our future together. We talk about eventually moving to a bigger place with land for our own garden, maybe starting a family once the business was stable enough to run itself. She had opinions about everything. What kind of house we'd want, how many kids, even what we'd name them. The only thing that sometimes bothered me was how quickly she'd change from supporting my vision to having her own vision for my business. But then again, that's what partnerships were about, right? Compromise and shared goals. Looking back, I should have paid more attention to whose goals we were actually sharing. By summer 2020, I knew I wanted to propose. I spent weeks planning the perfect proposal. Brenda had mentioned loving sunrise views, so I arranged for us to go camping at Rocky Mountain National Park in late August. I told her it was just a weekend getaway, but I'd coordinated with a local photographer to capture the moment from distance. The morning I planned to propose, we hiked up to Bear Lake before dawn. Brenda complained about the early hour, but once we reached the overlook and watched the sun paint the mountains gold, she was speechless. That's when I dropped to one knee. "Brenda Peck," I said, pulling out the ring I'd been hiding for 2 weeks. "You've made me a better man and a better businessman. Will you marry me?" The diamond caught the morning light perfectly. Brenda's hands flew to her mouth. Then she was nodding and crying and saying yes over and over. She kept holding her hand up to admire the ring, turning it this way and that. "Cole, it's gorgeous," she whispered. "How did you afford this?" I'd used most of my emergency business fund, but seeing her happiness made it worth every penny. "You're worth it," I told her. "You're worth everything." The photographer captured it all. The surprise, the tears, the kiss afterward. When we got the photos back a week later, Brenda immediately posted them on social media with a caption about finding her perfect partner in life and business. That phrase stuck with me. Partner in life and business. It felt like we were truly building something together. After the proposal, I asked Brenda to move in permanently. She'd been staying over most nights anyway, but making it official felt important. She agreed immediately, and we spent the next weekend moving her furniture from her downtown apartment to my place in Highlands. "We'll need more space eventually," Brenda said as we rearranged the living room to fit her designer pieces. "Maybe something in Cherry Creek or Wash Park. Somewhere with better resale value." I nodded, though privately I loved my little house. But couples compromised, right? And Brenda had excellent taste. The place definitely looked more sophisticated with her touches. The engagement period felt like the honeymoon phase all over again. Brenda threw herself into wedding planning with the same energy she brought to everything else. She researched venues, created spreadsheets comparing caterers, and somehow managed to book us a spot at the Denver Botanic Gardens for the following summer. "I want our wedding to reflect who we are," she explained while showing me flower arrangements on her laptop. Elegant but sustainable. Successful but down to earth. Everything seemed perfect. The business was thriving. We were planning our future together. And I had the woman I loved wearing my ring. I should have known it was too good to last. 2 months after our engagement, everything changed in a single afternoon. I was at the main distribution center, reviewing inventory with my warehouse manager Tom, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed my boss from 5 years ago, Marcus Chun from Denver Tech Solutions. "Cole, I got a proposition for you," Marcus said without preamble. "We're launching a new division focused on sustainable business solutions. I want you to head it up." The offer was substantial, nearly double what I was making for my delivery service, plus equity in the new division. Marcus explained that they'd been watching my success and wanted to bring that expertise in-house. "Think about it," Marcus continued. "Steady salary, full benefits, a team of developers to help scale your ideas. You could impact thousands of businesses instead of just local customers." I told him I'd consider it and hung up feeling conflicted. The financial security was tempting, especially with wedding expenses looming. But I built something from nothing with my own hands. The delivery service wasn't just a business. It was my baby. That evening, I told Brenda about the call over dinner at our favorite Thai place. I expected her to be as conflicted as I was, maybe help me think through the pros and cons. Instead, her eyes lit up immediately. "Cole, this is incredible," Brenda said, setting down her chopsticks. "Do you realize what this means? Steady income, corporate benefits, networking opportunities. We could move to that house in Cherry Creek, plan a bigger wedding. But what about the delivery service?" I asked. "What about everything we've built?" Brenda waved her hand dismissively. "You could sell it to Tom or find another buyer. The important thing is moving up in the world, not staying stuck in the same place. Her reaction caught me off guard. This woman had spent months helping me grow the business, talking about our expansion plans, presenting herself as my partner in building something meaningful. Now, she was ready to throw it all away for corporate stability? I need time to think about it, I said carefully. What's to think about? Brenda's voice had an edge I'd never heard before. This is a no-brainer, Cole. Unless you're afraid of real success. That stung. I'd taken plenty of risks building my business, faced plenty of challenges. I wasn't afraid of success. I just wasn't sure corporate life was the right kind of success for me. We drove home in silence that night, and for the first time since I'd known her, Brenda felt like a stranger sitting next to me. Maybe I should have seen it then, the first sign that we wanted different things from life. After a week of sleepless nights, I made my choice. I turned down Marcus's offer and decided to keep building my delivery service. The decision felt right in my gut, even if it meant giving up financial security. When I told Brenda over breakfast, her coffee mug hit the table harder than necessary. "You turn it down?" she said, her voice tight with disbelief. "Cole, do you have any idea what you just threw away?" "I threw away someone else's dream," I replied. "This business is mine. I built it from nothing, and I'm not ready to hand it over to a corporation." Brenda stared at me like I'd lost my mind. "So you'd rather stay small forever? Rather struggle with cash flow and inventory problems when you could have had guaranteed success?" "This isn't small," I said, gesturing toward the delivery schedule on my laptop. "We're serving over 3,000 families now. We're making a real difference in people's lives." Making a difference doesn't pay for weddings, Cole. It doesn't buy houses in good neighborhoods or send kids to private schools. That's when it hit me. We weren't talking about the same thing at all. I was talking about purpose and meaning. She was talking about status and appearances. 3 weeks later, disaster struck. A late-season hailstorm tore through our main supplier's fields outside Fort Collins, destroying nearly 60% of the organic crops we contracted for the fall season. In one afternoon, I lost my primary source of produce and faced the prospect of disappointing hundreds of customers. I spent 72 hours straight on the phone, scrambling to find replacement suppliers. Some were twice as expensive as my usual sources. Others couldn't guarantee organic certification. By the time I'd patched together enough inventory to keep operating, my profit margins had essentially disappeared. The financial strain was immediate and brutal. I had to choose between paying my warehouse rent and covering payroll for my 3 part-time employees. I chose payroll. These guys have families to feed, and they'd stuck with me through everything. That evening, I sat Brenda down and explained the situation honestly. We need to postpone the wedding, scale back our spending, and tighten our belts until I could rebuild the supplier relationships. "How long?" Brenda asked, her arms crossed. 6 months, maybe 8. I've got leads on 2 new organic farms in the Arkansas Valley, but it takes time to establish those partnerships. Brenda's laugh was cold and sharp. 8 months. So basically you want me to put my life on hold because you refused a guaranteed corporate job. I want you to believe in what we're building together, I said. This is a temporary setback, not a permanent failure. Brenda stood up, pacing to the window. There is no we in this, Cole. This is your stubborn pride putting us both at risk. Her words stung, but I held my ground. Every business faces challenges. The ones that survive are the ones with partners who stick together through tough times. Partners, Brenda repeated, turned to face me. Real partners make smart decisions. They don't gamble with their future out of some misplaced sense of independence. That night, Brenda slept in the guest room for the first time since moving in. The next 2 months tested everything I thought I knew about our relationship. I threw myself into rebuilding the business, working 18-hour days to secure new suppliers and retain existing customers. Brenda, meanwhile, grew more distant and critical with each passing week. "You're never here anymore," she complained one evening when I came home at nearly midnight. "When you are here, all you talk about is the business. It's like I don't even exist." She wasn't wrong. I was consumed with saving what I'd built, but I expected my fiancé to understand that this was temporary. Once the business stabilized, we could focus on our relationship again. "This is what it takes right now," I explained. "I'm fighting to save our future." "Our future?" Brenda's voice was sharp. "This isn't our future, Cole. This is your obsession." Money became a constant source of tension. When I suggested we cook at home instead of going out for dinner, Brenda accused me of being cheap. When I mentioned that we might need to choose a less expensive wedding venue, she went silent for 3 days. The breaking point came when my truck broke down during a delivery run. The transmission gave out completely, leaving me stranded with 200 pounds of organic produce that needed to be delivered within hours. I called Brenda, hoping she could help me figure out a solution. "I'm at work, Cole," she said when I explained the situation. "I can't just drop everything because you didn't maintain your vehicle properly. I need help here," I said, standing beside my broken-down truck with customers waiting for their orders. "This is an emergency." "Your emergencies are becoming a daily occurrence," Brenda replied. "Maybe it's time to admit this business isn't working and find a real job." I ended up calling my brother Jake, who dropped what he was doing to help me transfer the produce to his truck and complete the deliveries. As we drove from house to house, he asked the question I'd been avoiding. "Is she always like this now?" Jake said, "Because the Brenda I met 6 months ago would have been the first person offering to help." He was right. The woman who'd once enthusiastically helped pack delivery routes and charmed farmers at markets had become someone who saw my struggles as personal inconveniences rather than challenges we should face together. That night, I found Brenda packing a suitcase in our bedroom. "Where are you going?" I asked. "My sister's place for the weekend," she said without looking up. "I need some space to think about things." "Think about what things?" Brenda finally met my eyes, and what I saw there was colder than I'd ever seen before. "Whether this is really the life I want," she said. "Whether you're really the man I thought you were." She left that Friday evening and didn't come back until the following Tuesday. When she did return, something fundamental had changed between us, and we both knew it. December brought the final collapse of everything I thought we'd built together. The business was slowly recovering, but Brenda had checked out completely. She came and went like a ghost, never saying where she'd been or who she was with. One snowy afternoon, I came home early to find her packing boxes in our bedroom. Her designer clothes were folded neatly into suitcases, and everything that had made the house feel like ours was disappearing into cardboard containers. "What's going on?" I asked, though part of me already knew. Brenda didn't look up from her packing. "I can't do this anymore, Cole. I can't pretend this is the life I want." "So, you just leaving?" Without even trying to work things out, she finally met my eyes, and what I saw there was stone-cold determination. "There's nothing to work out. You made your choice when you turned down that corporate job. You chose your business over our future. I chose building something meaningful over taking the easy path," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I thought you understood that about me." Brenda laughed, but there was no humor in it. "What I understand is that you're more interested in playing small-town entrepreneur than being a real provider." That's when I saw him through the window, a man in an expensive suit loading boxes into a black BMW sedan. I recognized him as Derek Hartman, a partner at the investment firm where Brenda's design company had recently been working on a major project. "How long?" I asked quietly. "How long what?" Brenda's voice was defiant, but her face gave her away. "How long have you been seeing him?" Brenda shrugged, like it didn't matter. "Derek appreciates ambition, Cole. He understands what it takes to succeed in the real world." The casual way she said it hit me harder than any screaming match could have. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a mistake. It was a calculated decision based on what she thought I could provide versus what Derek already had. "So this is about money," I said. "This is about being with a man who knows what he wants and goes after it," Brenda replied, closing the last suitcase. "Derek doesn't waste time on small dreams or stubborn pride." She walked to the door, then turned back one last time. "You're not a man, Cole," she said, her voice cutting through me like ice. "You're a boy playing business while real men build empires. I can't waste any more time waiting for you to grow up." I stood there speechless as she walked out the door and got into Derek's BMW. I watched them drive away, taking 4 years of my life with them. That night, alone in a house that suddenly felt enormous and empty, I realized that Brenda had never really known me at all. She'd fallen in love with her idea of who I could become, not who I actually was. But her words echoed in my head. "You're not a man." Maybe she was right. Maybe real men didn't choose principles over profit. The months after Brenda left were the darkest period of my life. I stopped caring about the business, stopped returning phone calls from customers, stopped getting out of bed some days. The house felt like a tomb, filled with reminders of the life I'd thought we were building together. My brother Jake intervened after 3 weeks of unreturned calls. He showed up at my door with groceries and a stern talking to. "You look like hell, Cole," he said, pushing past me into the kitchen. "When's the last time you ate something that wasn't delivered?" "I'm fine," I mumbled, but we both knew it was a lie. "No, you're not fine," Jake said, unpacking fresh vegetables and actual food. "You're letting that woman destroy everything you worked for. Is that really how you want this story to end?" Jake was right, but climbing out of that hole felt impossible. I'd lost my fiancée, my confidence, and nearly lost my business. Starting over at 37 felt like admitting complete failure. The turning point came from an unexpected source. Sarah Martinez, who had been Brenda's best friend since college, called me one evening in February. "Cole, I need to tell you something," Sarah said. "Brenda and Derek have been together since last September. She was planning to leave you even before your business trouble started." The revelation hit me like a physical blow, but strangely, it also brought clarity. This wasn't about my choices or my failures. Brenda had been building an exit strategy for months. "She used your business problems as an excuse," Sarah continued. "But the truth is, Derek was promising her things you couldn't match. A house in Cherry Creek, connections to Denver's social elite, a lifestyle she wanted more than she wanted you." Sarah paused, then added something that changed everything. "She asked me to introduce her to Derek last summer. She said you were too content with small success, and she needed someone with bigger ambitions. I should have warned you then, but I thought she'd come to her senses." After that conversation, something shifted inside me. The pain was still there, but so was anger, not just at Brenda, but at myself for believing someone who'd never really been on my team. I threw myself back into the business with a fury that surprised even me. I rebuilt relationships with suppliers, expanded into new markets, and started offering services I'd never considered before. Within 6 months, I was not only back to pre-crisis levels, but actually growing faster than ever. The irony wasn't lost on me. Losing Brenda had forced me to prove I could succeed on my own terms, without someone constantly questioning my decisions or pushing me toward paths that felt wrong. By the end of that year, Cole's organic delivery was serving 5,000 families across the Front Range, and I'd received inquiries from investors interested in franchising the model. I was building something real, something lasting, something that belonged to me. And for the first time since Brenda left, I felt like myself again. 2 years after Brenda walked out, I got an invitation that would bring everything full circle. My cousin Mike was celebrating his 10th wedding anniversary with a dinner party at his house in Boulder. The guest list was small, just close family and friends who'd been part of their journey. "Bring someone if you want," Mike said when he called. "But no pressure. We just want to celebrate with people who matter." I hadn't been dating seriously since Brenda left. A few casual relationships here and there, but nothing that felt worth pursuing. The business had become my focus, and honestly, I was happier single than I'd been in years. But Sarah Martinez had been such a crucial part of my recovery that when I asked if she wanted to come as a friend, she immediately said yes. Sarah had recently ended her own long-term relationship and was dealing with her own fresh start. We weren't romantic, just two people who'd supported each other through difficult times. The dinner was perfect. Mike's wife had outdone herself with a spread that showcased local ingredients, and the conversation flowed easily among old friends. I was catching up with college buddies I hadn't seen in months, sharing stories about the business, feeling genuinely happy for the first time in years. Then Brenda walked in. She'd been invited too, of course. She and Mike's wife had stayed friends despite everything. But seeing her there, looking polished and confident in an expensive dress, with Derek Hartman's hand possessively on her back, hit me like a punch to the stomach. What made it worse was seeing her reaction when she spotted Sarah sitting next to me. Brenda's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, confusion, then something that looked almost like betrayal. As if Sarah had somehow wronged her by supporting me through the aftermath of her departure. "Well, this is interesting," Brenda said when she approached our table, Derek trailing behind her like an accessory. "Sarah, I didn't expect to see you here with Cole." "Life's full of surprises," Sarah replied evenly. "Cole needed a friend, and I happen to value loyalty." The barb hit its mark. Brenda's smile became forced, and Derek looked uncomfortable with the obvious tension. They found seats at the opposite end of the table, but I could feel Brenda watching us throughout the evening. During dessert, Mike stood to make a toast about marriage, friendship, and the people who stick by you through thick and thin. His words about real partners supporting each other's dreams felt pointed, though I'm sure he didn't mean it that way. Brenda and Derek left early, making excuses about another engagement. But not before Brenda cornered Sarah in the kitchen. I couldn't hear the conversation, but Sarah's expression when she returned told me everything I needed to know. She wanted to know if we were together, Sarah said quietly. When I said we were just friends, she seemed almost disappointed, like she wanted there to be drama. Looking back, I realized that seeing Sarah and me together had shaken something loose in Brenda. Maybe she'd expected me to be broken forever, validation that leaving me had been the right choice. Instead, she saw a man who'd rebuilt his life stronger than before. The real fireworks started 3 days after the dinner. My phone rang at 7 in the morning, an unknown number that I almost didn't answer. "Cole, we need to talk." Brenda's voice was tight with emotion. "About you and Sarah." "We don't need to talk about anything," I replied calmly. "You made your choice 2 years ago. Of all the women in the world, why did it have to be her?" Brenda's voice was rising. "You were with her all along, weren't you? That's why you never fought for us." The accusation was so ridiculous, I almost laughed. "Brenda, Sarah and I are friends. She supported me after you left me for Derek. Remember Derek? Your current boyfriend. Don't you dare judge me," Brenda snapped. "At least I was honest about what I wanted instead of sneaking around with my ex-fiance's best friend." "Honest," I said, feeling my own anger rise. "You were cheating on me for months before you left. Sarah told me the truth about your little plan with Derek." The line went quiet for a long moment. "Call me again, and I'll report you for harassment," I said firmly. "Move on with your life, Brenda." "I have." She hung up, but 20 minutes later my phone rang again. Different number, same voice. "Please, Cole." Brenda's tone had shifted to pleading. "I made a mistake. Derek and I, we're not. I was confused and scared about money, but I realize now what we had was real. What we had was you using me until someone richer came along," I said. "I'm not interested in being your backup plan." When she called a third time from another number, I was done playing games. "Listen carefully," I told her. "If you contact me again, I'm calling the police and filing a restraining order. Leave me alone, leave Sarah alone, and figure out your own life." That was the last call. 6 months later, I learned through mutual friends that Derek had broken up with Brenda after discovering she'd been trying to reconnect with me. Apparently, he'd found the call logs on her phone and decided he didn't want to deal with someone who wasn't fully committed to their relationship. The irony wasn't lost on me. Brenda had lost both of us by trying to keep her options open. Today, 3 years later, Cole's Organic Delivery serves 15,000 families across Colorado. I've got 12 full-time employees and have been approached by investors interested in expanding into other states. More importantly, I build it all on my own terms, without compromising my values or settling for someone else's vision of success. Sarah and I remain close friends. We've both moved on romantically. She's dating a teacher from her kid's school, and I've been seeing an environmental lawyer who actually appreciates what I do. But our friendship survived everything and became stronger because of it. Sometimes I think about Brenda's words, "You're not a man." She was wrong, of course. Real men don't abandon their principles for easy money or stay with partners who don't believe in them. Real men build something meaningful and stand by their choices, even when it's difficult. I learned that being a man isn't about impressing women who measure success by bank accounts. It's about knowing who you are and refusing to compromise that for anyone. And that lesson was worth every moment of pain she put me through.